scripture for today's sermon is coming from Mark 5, 1 to 20. A familiar and yet maybe we don't talk about very often scripture. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of Gerasenes, and when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, stampeded down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the man possessed by demons sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they became frightened. Those who had seen what had happened to the man possessed by demons and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by the demons begged him that he might be with them. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. Pastor Will.
So with Lent and Easter coming to an end, we get to go back to the sermon series that I started a while ago. And the story that happened before was Jesus calming the storm. Wherever Jesus goes, something is happening. And part of that is because the people telling us the story aren't telling us the boring in-between times, but it doesn't sound like there are boring in-between times. So they're on the boat. We can just imagine for the disciples. They want to get away from the crowds. Everywhere they go, they're just crowded with people asking for help. And Jesus is helping beyond the energy that Jesus seems to have, certainly beyond the energy and the patience that the disciples have. And then they get in the boat, and while they're on the boat, they think they're getting a rest, some sort of reprieve. Then a storm comes. And the storm almost destroys the boat and the disciples with it, but Jesus calms the storm. The disciples are scared out of their minds, just trying to grapple with who Jesus is. And then this story happens. So the disciples, it seems they're just ready for a break. They're just ready to relax. And partly what we don't know exactly, but it seems like maybe they've settled they've directed their boat towards non-Jewish territory. They're among the Gerasenes, that's outside of Israel, and they are coming to shore. And as soon as they get there, Jesus is confronted by this man. And I've seen video recreations of this story. You might have seen a dramatic one too. It's not exactly in the story, but is this, so we don't really know, was this a confrontation? Did the man come out and charge at Jesus? Did Jesus see the man and charge toward him? Or did Jesus just kind of saunter up the hill and find him there? But this confrontation was inevitable. Here's Jesus, who the demons themselves recognize as Son of the Most High God. And then the demon, not just one, but a legion of them, possessing, controlling, empowering, in all the worst ways, empowering this man. And we see the man is living in the tombs. Whenever we hear these stories, it's relatively short. It's longer than some other stories. It's 20 verses. But there's only so many details you can include. So sometimes I think the storytellers include details to provide symbols for us. So this man is living in the tombs. The tombs is nowhere that a person should be living. The tombs are away from everything, away from the village, away from civilization, away from hope and any kind of quality of life. So is this man living there because he has retreated away from society, or has he been kicked out of society? Well, probably a combination of the two. The man is living unpredictably. He's a wild man. Nobody knows what to do with the guy. So everybody is safer, including the man, when he's at the tombs. But he's at the tombs. This is a place of death. He's one step away from death himself. What I want to communicate about this story, about this man, is the difficulty for us and the villagers in the story, but mostly for us, the difficulty for us to separate the self from the situation. The man he's cast out, and none of us can blame the villagers for doing that. They couldn't control him. They were terrified of what he could do, what he was capable of, and nobody knew how to help him. But where does the person end, and where does the demon begin? And we'll see that throughout this story, that the characters themselves don't know. And the storyteller isn't clear to us, the audience, where the dividing line is. And I think we struggle with that in our own lives. The people that you work with, the people that are sharing the road with you, the people who live next door to you, the people who live in the same house as you. Sometimes we have trouble separating the situation from the self. And that includes ourselves. So I want that to be your filter for hearing this story. So the man goes on to explain how he's so possessed by these demons that he's uncontrollable, and they've tried to chain him up for everyone's protection, including his own. If we chain him down, he can't do any damage. But the demons wouldn't be contained that way. The chains break. He can't be held that way. That's why he's out there. And not only that, but he's howling. There aren't words in the Bible to talk about werewolves, but that's kind of as close as we get to it. That this man is literally howling like an animal. And it says he's bruising himself or cutting himself with stones. So we can easily imagine how everyone in the village would be terrified of this guy. But we have the luxury of listening to the story, of reading the story for ourselves, and we don't really have to think about what we would do. So, from a distance, we can say, oh, well, they should also feel sorry for him. Because he's not just unpredictable, he's also harming himself. Why is he scratching himself? The demons, they sort of want to keep the host alive. They want to keep him alive so that they can continue to do their thing. But the man inside of himself knows there's something wrong. And he thinks, maybe I can scratch this out. Maybe if I harm myself, then that'll get the demon out of me. We sometimes, even as simple as we are, we sometimes, we know we have problems, but we don't know how to fix it. And we want to. And we do things that don't make sense, that our doctors don't like, that our therapists don't like, to try to fix the problem, because we have to do something. And when we look around us, then we can see that's happening. We can see other people are dealing with their situations in ways that we think are destructive. And when we blend them together, when we see their situation and we see themselves and we tie them together, then we think, well, this person is crazy. They're making things worse for everybody. They're making bad choices. They're dealing with the consequences of their bad choices. When we blend it together, then we think, well, they deserve all of these problems. But when we can see there's a self here, there's a good person here, there's a beloved creation of God here, there's somebody's child here, then we can separate the problem and see that they are a victim of the problem in the same way that they are a victim of their own situation and the victim of their own choices. So then the storyteller goes on to explain this interaction. So we get to see Jesus talking to this person. And it's not entirely clear which is the man acting and which is the demon acting. So the man runs out and kneels in front of Jesus, bows in front of Jesus. Is this reverence in the way that you would honor and worship a king or someone important? Or is this fear, like a king can hurt you? There's begging here. Is the man begging or are the demons begging? The voice says, Jesus, you are son of the Most High God. What do you want to do with me? Who is it that's recognizing Jesus' power? Is it the man or the demon? All of this is tied up, and in some ways there are important implications. Is Jesus acting sympathetically to the man, or is he sympathetic to the demons? Because we want Jesus to be sympathetic to the person and not sympathetic to the evil forces controlling and destroying the person. And we don't really quite get an answer. And I don't think it's important for us to know which is which, but we do know that Jesus is sympathetic to the man. And Jesus is demonstrating authority over the situation that the man finds himself in. But in Jesus' response, he differentiates. He can see there's a man and there are demons. He can see that there's something different here. And when Jesus speaks to us, Jesus does the same thing. Right? We, in our own prayer times, we kneel to God and we ask for things. We want clarity, we want wisdom, we want our problems to go away. But in order to ask for that, we have to believe that it's possible. And in order to ask Jesus to help us, we have to believe, one, that he has the power to help and that we are worthy of the help. And sometimes that's the harder part. Sometimes we don't pray, we can't pray because we don't think we deserve it. Or we don't think that we are capable of living into the new life that Jesus wants for us. So we don't ask because we don't think we deserve. But when we are on our knees, when we are communicating with Jesus, Jesus sees through the situation. Jesus can see the self independent of, separate of, above the situation that we find ourselves in. So then Jesus asks for the name of this demon. And this is always confusing. Sometimes Jesus operates with divine wisdom. Jesus just knows everything. So is Jesus asking because he doesn't know? Is Jesus asking for a different reason? Sort of like, do you know why I pulled you over? That's kind of a question still, but there's some wisdom behind it. So there's a question. What is your name? What is the man's name? What are the demon's names? But the demon answers, but doesn't really answer. To say there are a bunch of us. We are a legion. We are an army of demons inside here. Okay, that's stating a numerical reality, but what are the names? It seems there's an evasiveness. We don't want to tell you who we are because we don't want you to call us out by name and defeat us by name. We just want you to know that we are here. And this is, I think, part of what we do when we're praying too. That we can't really begin to be cured of a situation until we know what the situation is. Until we understand the situation. And sometimes what we think is the problem isn't the problem. We have trouble separating the symptoms of an illness and the causes of the illness from the illness itself. Jesus wants to cure the illness, and sometimes the symptoms will go away. Sometimes other things aren't as connected to it as we think. It's interesting in this story, the way that they talk about the region here. The storyteller introduces it and explains where it is. This is the area of the Gerasenes. This is in the area of the 10 cities, or the Decapolis. So this is not Jewish territory. But the demons beg Jesus, don't send us out of this region. It's not clear if they mean the hillside. It's not clear if there's like a deeper spiritual connection. Don't send us away. Don't take away our dominance of this spiritual realm. We're not entirely clear. And then later on, afterwards, we see, to just kind of jump ahead a little bit, the man, once he's been healed, he wants to leave the region too. But Jesus says, no, you have to stay. But also the people are troubled by Jesus, and they want Jesus to leave the region. And as the workers, as the people watching the pigs, as they run away from the region and tell the story, all of a sudden people start running to the region. Some people are afraid when God works through people, and some people are attracted. And it all depends where our priorities lie. In the story, the words change at the beginning. Some translations introduce it as an evil spirit, some as an unclean spirit. And this word unclean in a Jewish context can sometimes mean not cleansed by the rituals of Jewish understanding, and sometimes they're just inherently unclean, just like the pigs. And so in the same verse it says that the unclean spirits want to be sent into the pigs. Well, the Jewish audience would understand the pigs were also unclean. They wanted to go from one unclean identity to a new unclean identity. And this amazing, powerful thing happens, which we can't really understand, but 2,000 pigs all of a sudden start stampeding. And when we think of stampede, we usually don't think of pigs. But this stampede of pigs happens, and there is a crowd of people, and it is their job to manage the pigs, control the pigs. And now the pigs are gone, they've failed at their jobs, and they have to report back what has happened. So they go back because of the pigs. They go back, the crazy thing has happened to the pigs. They go back into town, they want to report, they want their boss to know they haven't done anything wrong. They want some authorities to come and address the situation. And the people, they hear this and they run out to see. There's no way a crowd of pigs stampeded. This isn't a thing that happens. And they get out there and they see something has happened. This guy who was crazy and unpredictable and howling and hurting himself, all of these things, making our lives uncomfortable because we didn't even like to look at him. Now, he's just a guy. This is crazy to them. He wasn't even a guy before. He was the crazy person. He was more crazy than person. Now all that's left is person. And they're amazed. And they came out because they heard the story of the pigs, and now they see that the man is fully dressed, whereas before he wasn't. Now they can see that he's sitting properly, that he's talking calmly, that he's doing all of these things. The problem that they understood before no longer exists, and they are amazed at what has happened. They are in awe of what has happened. But they are also uncomfortable with what has happened. So, the crowd has come and they see that Jesus has healed this man, but they also know the pigs have been destroyed. And the crowd comes and they're amazed. But the workers, they saw it too. Some of them have come back and they said, hey, hold on. This guy isn't the whole story. The pigs are the story. And all of a sudden the crowd turns. And they forget what has happened. They forget the miracle. They forget the powerful thing that has happened to the crazy person, because they were okay to set him aside as the crazy person, but now the pigs have been destroyed. Now, 2,000 pigs dying is terrible. That's not something to be dismissed. And I wonder if there's some kind of story behind this. Maybe this is like a farming cooperative. That's the thing that happened. Maybe everybody had a few pigs in this herd, and now everybody's lost some income. Maybe everybody's lost some food, so there's a recognition there. But it seems in this area, which would have been sort of on the fault lines between the Jews and their neighbors, maybe now there's suspicion. Wait a second, the pigs was sort of what made us different from the Jews. As long as we had the pigs, we didn't have to worry about the Jews coming here. But now one of the Jews has come and killed our pigs. Maybe they want us to be Jews. Maybe they won't let us eat pigs anymore. Maybe they want us to be circumcised. And all of these things are churning in their minds, and now the show of power that they've seen has made them afraid. And you might not think that you're part of that crowd, but that does sometimes happen. We love to see a transformation story. We love to see somebody come up and talk about something that bothered them and now how they're better. We love to hear alcoholics talk about their new life post-alcohol. Unless we enjoy alcohol. Right? We love to hear how somebody has given away all of their money and they found new meaning and purpose in their poverty. Unless we have a little bit of money. We love to hear how somebody else has given up a worldview of hate and embraced a worldview of love, unless we sort of recognize that hateful worldview as our own. Sometimes we are just like the crowd. We see somebody else's transformation, and we are holding on to a little bit of that person's past. All of a sudden, that other person's transformation is now our problem. Because we don't want to be transformed, because we're holding on to the problem that was before. We cannot separate that situation from ourselves. But Jesus comes to us, seeing the self separate from the situation. The man, after all of this has happened, the man comes to Jesus. And I can picture it here. The disciples, like I was saying before, they're just ready. Okay, let's drop the anger. Let's just settle here for a little while. I can imagine that the disciples are still at the boat. They probably haven't even unpacked. And here Jesus comes back. Sorry, guys, we just got kicked out. We have to keep moving. And here's this man saying, Jesus, take me with you. These people can't accept me. I'm the crazy person. They'll never appreciate me for who I am. I don't belong here anymore. This isn't my story anymore. I've been changed. I'm a new person. You've made me a new person. I want to follow you. I want to live the way that you want me to live. It's beautiful. It's powerful. But Jesus says, no, you've got to stay here. It's interesting how this sometimes happens. Jesus sometimes says, yeah, go tell everybody, and sometimes says, okay, but don't make a big deal of it. So Jesus looks at this man. Everybody knows him. Of course, it's a small town, rural area. Everybody knows who he is. And the man says, no, they'll never see me as more than this. They will always know who I was. And Jesus says, exactly. That is your mission now. They know who you were. Show them who you are now. We have this too. We can experience transformation on our own. We can experience growth on our own. But the scary thing is to try to be the new and improved version of ourselves among the same old people who only know us as the old version. And Jesus says, exactly. You have to live out your new identity, your better identity, your transformed identity among the people who don't think that you're capable of anything more. Because you are capable of something more. You have experienced more, so you have a story to tell. There's a double challenge in this story, I think. We look around and we see people who look different than us, talk different than us, think different than us, experience life different than us. And we can bundle that all together and write them off because they're part of that group. They're irredeemable. They are messed up by the world. And we can get rid of them. We don't have to worry about them. And that's just who they are. No. That's the situation they're in. That's not their self. Jesus sees the self. There might be a problem that we have to work around, but that's not their whole story. We might see it as a problem even though that isn't it. Jesus sees the truth, and we need to be on the side of Jesus. And as much work as that is, that's enough work by itself. But we do that to ourselves sometimes. We get into patterns and we don't think we can shake the pattern. We think there's something wrong with us, and even Jesus can't help us. Because if we're honest with Jesus about it, then he'll think less of us. No. It's the situation you're in. That's not your story. So, we come to Jesus. We can trust that Jesus knows our self, and he knows our situation, and he knows they are not the same. So we open ourselves. We trust Jesus with ourself and with our situation, and we know that he can transform us, and he will. So I'll close with a word of prayer, and we'll go from there. Jesus, we come to you with burdens on our shoulders, with masks on our faces, with situations that we think encompass everything. And you, in your divine wisdom, you see past it all. You who were there when we were created, you who were there when we were cleansed, you who were there when no one else loved us but you know us. So God, help us to lean into that love, to show you our truest selves, and walk with you through our situations. And God, give us the grace to return the favor to the people around us. Give us the grace to see the beauty in the people that we don't understand. Give us the grace and the power to love people who we might not otherwise want to. God, we have received love from you that we didn't deserve. And so we withhold love wrongly sometimes from other people who do deserve it from us. So God, empower us to be agents of your love and care. Lead us, walk with us, and transform us. In Jesus' name we pray.